Record.
Baseline or some shit.
All right, we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the first episode of the Concerned Dabs podcast. I am your host, Katie M. Kane. My co host, broadcasting from the East Coast, is Will Terps.
Yo,
Um,
what's up?
on the production end, we have Mitchell Wilson and Jesse Curry in Lampway, Idaho. And our first guest is going to be Jackson McCormack from Natural Wonders. We already have him on the video call, but me and Will Terps wanted to do a little bit of intro. We met while working at a dispensary in Portland called Natural Wonders. We always had some cool conversations about the industry. Lots of customers and patients would stick around to hear us chop game. So we decided to do a podcast. I've been a medical cannabis patient in Oregon and Washington since 2011. I've got lots of production and retail experience, not so much extraction, but I have a lot of concerns with the way the industry is going for the future. And I appreciate my homie Will's input on such issues too. So, Will, if you could give a little bit of intro about yourself, the places
Yeah,
you've worked as far as experience, and then also you write for another publication, right?
yeah, definitely. I work at Natural Wonders. I'm a bud tender. Been a bud tender there for around 3 years now, and I also write for the Oregon Leaf. Do reviews mainly. I do some other stories like farm profiles and such. Been writing for them for about 5 years now, maybe a bit longer. But yeah, that's what I do.
Dope, dope. Okay, so we got a little bit of time. Josh Galbraith from Kayak Chat is supposed to call in at 8:15, so Jackson is going to tune off until 8:45. He's going to turn his camera off, he said. Hopefully
Cool.
it'll
Just want to
be
make sure it all works. So I'm just gonna
yeah.
mute and turn the camera so it stays connected.
Cool, thanks, dude. Yeah, we appreciate you, bro. We'll talk to you in a few minutes.
Sounds good.
Cool. Okay, so Will, you are on a little bit of an extended vacation because the shop you work at is remodeling and relocating.
Yep,
So,
exactly.
where are you located at on the East Coast?
I'm in Western Mass right now. Right now, I'm in Holyoke, in the Pioneer Valley, I guess you could say. Yeah, it's Massachusetts just legalized, and this is Western Mass is actually where the first recreational dispensaries opened up. I don't even think that there's any rec dispensaries still open in Boston. They're still waiting on uh, final approval.
Oh,
So
for
the
their
only
for
rec
their license.
yeah, the only rec spots in Massachusetts right now are in the western part of the state. There's NETA, New England Treatment Access in Northampton. There's INSA in East Hampton, and then there's Berkshire Roots in Pittsfield. And those are all recreationally approved dispensaries. I've been to all of them, checked it out. So
Dope. So, is it 18 and up or 21 and up?
it is 18 and up if you're a patient,
Okay.
and 21 and up for rec. So similar to Oregon.
Dope. So if you're a medical patient, is there still a discount? Like, is there no tax or something?
Yeah, there's no tax. I think the taxes are is similar to Oregon. I think they break it down a bit differently, but it's around 20-25%. Um, so, a $50 eighth turns out to be 60, 65, depending on the tax. And both my parents are medical patients. But the prices are still a little expensive out here. It's
Right
fifty
on.
dollars. It's $50 for an eighth if you're medical. So and
Is
that's
there
pretty.
is there a limit on purchase or possession?
No, there's no purchase limits for medical. You can buy as much concentrates as you want, as much flour as you want. The limit for recreational is an eighth of flour.
Oh, like per day?
Yeah, per day. Yep.
And then is there a seed to sale tracking system? So
Yeah, there is, and a
so
lot of times it's in mass. It's a lot of big. It's more the big players. It's not. They don't allow for like smaller craft growers necessarily to be able to thrive. So it's usually the big players, and most dispensaries have their own grows. So they're vertically integrated. It's kind of
But
what they want in mass.
yeah, does the law still allow for any home cultivation for recreational users?
It does. I'm not sure on the plant limit. I think it might be around 4. Definitely, it's pretty. I think the plant limits go a bit higher if you're medical.
Okay.
But there's definitely a lot of home growers, and the medical law
Yeah.
still allows for, patients to get their medicine that way. And the cool thing about New England is a lot of states reciprocate. So for example, Rhode Island reciprocates to Massachusetts,
Yeah,
Maine, and pretty much any other state that has medical program.
Arizona
Um,
does the same thing. You can fly into this state as long as you are not breaking the possession law here, which is 2.5 ounces. As long as you have your card on you, you won't get charged with possession.
exactly, exactly, and you also can't, unfortunately, buy product from dispensaries if you have an out-of-state medical license.
Same thing
Um,
here. Same thing,
yeah,
but
but
patient to patient is still legal. I've been
yeah,
told.
patient to
So
patient still legal, and at least if you're caught with it, whatever, you're still protected as a patient of the states.
yes, so anybody listening to this podcast right now, it is a great idea to obtain and keep your medical card no matter what, just in case you run into them boys. You
Definitely,
can pull out your card and catch no sweat, man.
absolutely.
So I moved from Oregon about a year ago in February of 2018. I moved to Phoenix, Arizona. I got my medical card down here. I wanted to start cultivating, but the law for cultivation down here is if you're a patient and you wish to grow for yourself, you have to live 25 miles from a dispensary, which eliminates like 95% of the whole population. The loophole workaround is that you can find a patient who lives outside that 25 miles and you can cultivate for them as their caregiver. I haven't found that patient yet, and I don't have the space where I live yet. My lease is up soon, so try and make a stab at it. I really miss that part about Oregon. Not only having my card, but even if it lapsed, you could still have your 4 plants. And I haven't done that in a year, and I miss it a lot, fellas. So um, if any laws go federally, that's what I want to campaign for: is that everybody can still cultivate their own. Um, I just
Definitely.
it's cool to buy from a store, but everybody should have access to seeds and to grow whatever works for them because sometimes you can't find what you're looking for in the store. And,
Exactly.
I just envision a world where everybody has 4 plants in their backyard and your neighbor might have some bomb that's peeking over the fence and you're like, trade with him, on Thanksgiving. It's like, dude, you want to trade a zip? Yeah, I'll trade a zip. Like that's the world I want to live in, fellas.
Definitely. I agree with that.
Um, so yeah, down here it's still medical, it's not recreational. Um, so with your medical card, the purchase limit is 2.5 ounces, and it's supposed to be for 2 weeks, but I've been back to a place and they didn't reject me or anything. I don't know how much they're tracking that. Um, Prices are pretty similar. Like you can get a $50 eighth of some bomb, and then there's budget eighths for like 20-25 bucks. But it's like with the shatter, there's a few places that have $20 grams, man. So and it's super dope, super clear, super stable. Um, it's I think 25% tax too, so it ends up being 25 bucks for that gram if you purchase with
Nice.
tax. And then the one thing that I am afraid of down here is there's no residual pesticide test required for any of the product that gets on the shelf. So
Same
Arizona's
with
pretty,
mass.
dude, yeah. So bugs are pretty big down here. The winter's pretty mild, so I don't think any of them die out over the winter. So I assume that's a real problem. I don't know what anybody's doing to handle that. I haven't seen anybody on IG or anybody I've talked to in person that says, "Nah, I use IPM. Buy the bugs from me."
Yeah.
And that's like the
Unfortunately,
answer. It's the answer I keep looking for, and I keep not getting it.
yeah. Unfortunately, I feel like that's with states that are just, I mean, just legalizing and just getting things going, it's like lesser known because Oregon, um, there's a lot of growers out there because the rec laws didn't necessarily allow for the shutout of small growers. Licenses aren't don't cost 80,000.
Right.
Um, and people know it's kind of universal. I mean, not universal, but I've seen a lot of growers in Oregon switch over to IPM, and pretty much a lot of people are using beneficial insects like predator mites, ladybugs, that type of stuff. Because as long as you
Yeah.
have those roaming your garden, you don't ever have to spray anything really.
Yeah, man, that's a I got Joshua Steensland to confirm that we can have him next Sunday on the cultivation episode.
Mhm,
And that dude is all about that shit, man. And companion
definitely,
plants to provide habitat for those bugs. Like he's got game, freshwater farms. Um,
definitely,
I just dig that. It's like no newts, man, just water. And most
yeah.
growers really can't claim that because they're dependent upon chemicals to
Definitely.
create their product. So I hope there's something on the state ballot that's going to require pesticide testing for medical cannabis in this state. We'll see if it passes.
Yeah, I
I'm
mean,
pretty sure.
because it just goes hand in hand with it being uh medicine. It's like you need your
Yes.
medicine to be clean. If your medicine is tainted with pesticides and is if you're a patient with a compromised immune system, that is you're not doing yourself any good by smoking pesticide tainted flower. And that's totally on the state. That's totally on the state and labs making sure that they have proper testing requirements for it. Oregon's doing a pretty good job. I mean, it's kind of scary to think that like the the herb that's tested for pesticides in Oregon goes through more stringent tests than like food does, like by
Yeah,
a long
dude.
shot,
Way
and
long
that's
shot.
super alarming just in itself.
That was my
Um,
argument with a lot of people was the stuff you can buy on the shelf at the store I work at is safer than anything you can buy at the grocery
yeah, and
store.
that's just wrong in its sense. It's like a a regulated industry, cannabis industry, which a lot of people consider unregulated, has stricter, more stringent pesticide testing than the FDA, and that's not
Yeah.
that's that
Yeah, it's
sucks.
messed up. Another article I read online said that USDA certified organic now allows herbicides to be on products that are labeled as organic. And
Yeah,
as long as it's not a pesticide, they view it as okay. I'm like, geez. And I feel like that was just a slick move to make glyphosate okay because,
yeah,
it's they call that a weed killer, but it also breaks down the stomachs of insects that consume anything that's been sprayed with it. So
yeah. It's shitty. It's like in order to protect corporate growers, because if you're a good grower, you know how to uh, integrate IPM into your garden and never have to spray.
yeah,
It's these
dude.
it's these chads, sorry to use that term, but these chads that don't know anything. They just got big money and they come in and they think they can hire a stellar grow team or they think they know what they're doing. And yeah, it's become a race to the bottom now in Oregon. It's like
Yeah, man.
yeah, it's like these chads can get by because if they have a failure crop but they can afford to price it like $3 a gram, the market's going to eat it up right now.
Yes, sir. Yes, they will. And it's yeah, every article I read about the supply in Oregon says it's like more than 1 million packs just sitting there waiting.
Yep,
And a bunch of it's from last year even. So I'm like, federal legalization would really help those guys out if they could export.
definitely. Yeah, allowing like Oregon grown products to go to other states. I mean, going back on the prices of when you were saying that Arizona you can find as a medical patient, there's a spot you can get $25 grams of shatter. In Mass now, I believe there's a half gram limit for recreational. So if you're a rec customer, you can only buy half gram person, and shatter costs 60 a gram, wax
Damn.
costs 50 gram, and distillate costs 95 a gram.
Damn, is that just
Yeah,
based on the THC numbers alone?
probably, yeah, and probably yield too. But
Yeah,
I couldn't believe that I saw the distillate priced it that much. They had a few strains, but I mean, everyone knows distillate is, you're making it from the crudest of the crude.
yeah,
So
dude. Yeah. Dark slabs turning into disty.
yeah, it's basically failed crops at 95 a gram. That's what I
Yeah,
don't like. That's what I don't like about distillate.
I agree, dude, with a little bit of nice terps added in.
Yep.
Um, so down here, another article that's been in the news is that Maricopa County is still pulling people over and busting them for concentrates, even though they have their medical card. People are still getting arrested for that, and it's a bummer because a lot of people do need that concentrated dosage for their medicine, and it would suck to get pulled over and have your medical card, still get shaken down, and still go to jail. I'm really concerned about that as far as the state goes because there was a law to outlaw concentrates, but it failed.
Hmm.
Like it failed on the House floor or whatever. So I don't know what those cops are
Well,
doing, man.
how does that? How is the what is the disconnect between selling concentrates in dispensaries and then people being able to be busted by it, like out in public, or like
Yeah, exactly. That's one of our guests. We don't know if he's going to be able to tune in or not. His name is Neelio Dimer. He's supposed to open up in Oklahoma. I was reading up on their laws, and it's really gray. Yes, I can. Oh, okay, cool, man. Can you hear us now? We cannot hear him yet, Mitchell. Sorry, folks. We have our first guest for the evening, Josh Galbraith from Kaya Shack, calling in. He's in transit, traveling from Salem, Oregon, I believe. He had some business to handle today, so he couldn't join the video stream, but he was able to call in. So we just got to work through these technical issues
yeah,
real quick.
try and get that figured out.
Get him patched into the stream, and we should be able to hear him. Okay. Yep. Hello, Josh. Can you hear us? Can you hear us, Josh?
Hello.
Yeah, I can hear you, Josh. Audio is not so good right now.
Hello.
Yeah, I can hear you now, bro. Can you hear us?
Yeah.
I can hear you.
Okay, there's a little bit of echo and delay.
Okay,
Hopefully we can deal with
I'm on my headphones, but I'm along the side of the highway in my car here. Oh yeah, not a problem. Thank you guys for having me.
Is he still there? Can you hear me?
Hello.
Yeah, can you please state the state where you're from and the name of your store where you work at as far as retail?
Hey man, yeah, my name is Josh Galbraith. I'm here in Oregon. The stores we have are Kaya Shack is the name of our dispensaries. We have three actually in Salem, Oregon, and one in Portland, Oregon.
Awesome. Awesome. So multiple locations, that's dope. And you guys also in production, so you are vertically integrated, correct?
Yeah, we are. We kind of started that concept in about 2014 when we actually started the dispensaries, and kind of had a small grow operation around the corner from our first dispensary where we supplied it with. It was a medical dispensary at that point, and we're now fully recreational, although we still offer medical discounts to people as far as no tax
Awesome.
and
That's good to hear,
Veterans.
man.
Absolutely.
I keep telling people to stay with their medical card. I know you can still purchase rec, but it's really worth it if you really need that as your medicine.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Absolutely, absolutely. It's still getting with that network of growers that you can still kind of create that your own personal integration with vertically. know.
Yeah. Okay. So, is that what inspired you to open a dispensary? Were you in production first and figured, man, we might as well just retail this stuff?
Well, I mean, I've been in production for about 30 years. So yeah, when this all started happening, on the medical side, oh, about 2001, we started figuring out ways of, creating co-ops, creating, a little bit larger of grow environments, and figuring out ways to, kind of get that off. Now, uh, it was about probably 2011 or 2012 around here when, we started having some medical dispensaries start popping onto the scene. And, we kind of looked at that, and we were putting our product into some other dispensaries, and it was like, well, it looks like this is the environment where we should vertically integrate and, start our own dispensaries, and got that process going. So,
That's awesome.
it's been quite the process, but it's it's rewarding. It's also a great amount of work, and you got to be really on top of things. So we've
Yes,
learned a
sir.
lot
Yes,
along the way.
sir. Yeah, the game changes like every 3 months, is what I tell folks, man.
It feels like it. Yeah, yeah. You definitely have to stay on board with all the laws, all the little changes with the different governing factors as far as your local environment, such as we have the Oregon Liquor Control Commission who governs the recreational environment here, and as well as you have your Oregon Department of Agriculture who verifies your scales, and you have a lot of different factors and factions that you have to kind of make sure are all vibing and all in sync to kind of stay on top of
Yeah.
things around here.
That was my next
In the in,
question, sir, was what sort of obstacles have you encountered in getting licensed? Because zoning and all the different governments is
yeah,
a lot to deal
that's
with.
funny you say zoning. Zoning is probably one of the biggest ones that can stop someone up. A lot of people will just kind of rush into things, and now with the licensing, of course, you have to make sure you're properly zoned ahead of time. But as far as challenges in building up to this, I've seen a lot of folks who would, kind of start into it real deep and invest a lot of money and kind of forget along the way that they had a few very basics to cover, like is your zoning proper and is it going to be proper as things change. So I did see that becoming a challenge. Although now you're seeing a lot more, um, uh, you know, local environments that are more conducive in wanting to bring folks in. I'm seeing less and less of a more of a fight, and now more of kind of some of these counties that are more inviting, and with the hemp bill, we're starting to see even more of that. So with the farm
That's
bill, that
good.
is.
That's good.
So
So
yeah, I
you
mean, things are starting to be, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
oh no, man. So you're into hemp farming also, correct?
We are just starting to kind of get into it. We have some partners that have been into it for the last few years. Um, and of course, we're kind of looking at ways to maximize our reach. So on the personal side, I'm kind of looking at starting a project in the hemp farming industry, which is actually looking to be kind of a neat project where we have kind of a hub in the center of many thousands of acres owned by some farmers out there that have kind of been paid to not use their property for many years. And we're kind of looking at creating a co-op out there once again, of these farmers and getting them to use their property to farm hemp, where in which we would create kind of a back-end supply chain um, to help them, process as well as get their product into the market. So right now there's a lot of movement going on within that industry as well, and we're seeing kind of a neat
Okay,
a
so
neat path.
Yeah, dope. So hopefully in the future, if we have a hemp episode, we could maybe have you as a guest again to talk about
Sure,
your input
sure,
on that
yeah,
business. The next
yeah,
question
yeah.
I had, the next question I have is, what do you feel is the most difficult issue facing retail cannabis businesses today?
Most difficult issue, without getting down any rabbit holes or anything. I think one of the most important issues is compliance. Um, uh, Compliance is the number one issue that everyone needs to keep, fully on top of, because OLCC, once again, that's our Liquor Control Commission, but they've also expanded to govern the cannabis. They really want everyone to be on top of the table and to be straight. And we, as an industry, we ourselves want to be there. And so, I think compliance is. I'm not going to say it's the difficult. It's one that just has to be constantly, aware. As a business, you have to constantly be aware of compliance. You can't have, things going into the market that haven't been through their proper change. You can't accept. And there's a whole lot of, just um, little things that you just kind of have to be aware of. So I think compliance is the main thing that can stop up a company. I've seen, you can't cut corners anymore, man. You just have to be really transparent. So,
Yeah, yeah. Everything has
Definitely,
to
yeah.
be labeled correctly, and you never know when somebody's going to
right,
come in and inspect.
Yeah, and I've been
and they
even seeing a
do,
lot of
and
that
and
at
they do.
Oregon too.
Yeah,
Yeah, well,
Just,
I'm in
a lot
Oregon,
of
and
people.
I do. I've seen, if you look at the Oregon Liquor Control Commission's bulletins they set out. I mean, we've seen a number of places actually get shut down for
It's a
being out of
lot. It's
compliance.
surprising.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so, and you think you put all this time and energy into doing this, and you just kind of drop the ball in one area, which is actually should be your first area you look at. So it's
yeah,
interesting and surprising, but at the same time, it's like I say, it's really easy for guys that have been in the industry for many years, or guys that have been maybe in cannabis for many years, to see this path that yes, we can now make a living at this. And you know at the same time, there's some certain things where you have to have everybody on your team. You have to have some guys that may not have been in cannabis for their whole lives, but may have been in business or have been in the legal sides of things. So
correct.
I think it's
Exactly.
I think it's very, very important to construct that team properly, and not just you know good old boy, which is fine to use your friends and everybody but at the same time, make sure you got your team dialed in, and compliant. So that's where I'm at.
Okay. Okay,
Definitely.
so I'm gonna skip around here to ask more about your business. I'm not gonna go in order. You guys have delivery at Kaya Shack, correct?
Actually, we do. We have not quite hit the roads with that. Interestingly, we have 4 delivery vehicles, and the main thing that's kept us off the road with that, and this was, I can actually go back to your last question, which would also be the banking is kind of a hiccup, and kind of an issue that we're dealing with in the industry, as you're well aware.
Awesome.
But so
Okay.
dealing with our delivery vehicles, what we had was initially a platform that was going to allow us to accept the credit cards or the debit cards and stuff like that. Where somehow in the middle of that, that business ended up not being able to connect us to the bank, and so our delivery got set back a little. So maybe that's another answer to the previous question as well. Is
Yeah,
what
federal
has been what has
legalization.
been a difficulty. Yeah, I should just add that another difficulty to the industry as a whole has been the banking. And so so delivery, yes, we're on the verge of launching our delivery. We're right there. We've got the cars, they're all wrapped, they look nice. There's safes in them like they're supposed to be, and there's certain things you have to do. You have to have them GPS, tracked. And so
Awesome.
we've got all that, and we're just waiting on the last little. connection to be made, and then we'll hit the streets. Absolutely.
Word. And that was another question on the list was how soon do you think federal legalization is going to happen? Because that would pretty much alleviate all of those concerns for your business, right?
Right. Well, the hopeful side of me is, I think it really could happen within the next couple of years, and maybe that's being a little
hopeful.
I mean, some guys are saying within 5 years. I'm saying I really think it could happen within the next 2 years, but we'll see. We'll see. I think there's been a lot of positive changes, and a lot of as the states are, more and more coming to their own senses, I would say, and becoming legal states. There's and especially with the farm bill and with the need to be able to kind of transport these CBD products, there's kind of becoming a blurred line. Is there's going to have to be some changes made. I think that's going to be one of the catalysts.
Oil.
Will be, are they going to have to stop every truck? Yeah, are you going to stop every truck now that's legally, running oil and running CBD flower through all the states? Truckloads full of it, which is interesting. And so I think that'll kind of be a catalyst as well. They're like, okay, we'll have to set up a program where we can ship this stuff, interstate, around the country and, around the globe. And so I think the hemp farm bill has been, and the new HR bills, the new Senate bills coming, and all that. I think we're going to see a lot of change coming pretty soon. That's the hopeful side of me. Yep.
Yeah, I dig it, man. I try to stay positive about the situation at all times. Because people are campaigning for it and doing
I was gonna
to stay
say,
within the rules.
I hope that federal legalization rolls around soon, and that states are actually able to, ship product to each other. Because I know I'm in Mass right now, and there's a few recreational dispensaries, and the one in town to me only ever has like 4 to 5 strain options at a time, and that's all they have. It's kind of still it's just getting started here, but
we're sitting over here with 1 million pounds of surplus, right?
Exactly.
Serious, dude.
Yeah,
it's crazy. Okay, so another question I had besides your in-house stuff: who's been your favorite farm this year in Oregon?
In Oregon, okay. Who's been my favorite farm? Well, I'm not going to say myself, of course, because that would be like shameless. No. Who I've seen doing a lot of work has been Doghouse. I've seen them do a lot of farms, and Jim Davis and them guys. They're doing some great work. Doghouse Farms. Now, if I were to answer that question on a more national level, I really love seeing what Mike Tyson is doing. I really see that Tyson Ranch is inspiring. And then it's coming from both sides, the small side of me and the large side of me. But Tyson, he seems to be really loving the plant and loving what he's doing, and they're putting out a nice product, and they're doing great with their marketing, and I love that. So, I think Doghouse locally has been a really cool farm, and I also think Mike Tyson is going to be fun to watch. So.
Word. I'm gonna have to look for Doghouse on the shelf next time I'm in Oregon, and then I'm gonna have to hit up Tyson.
Yeah, Doghouse is killer.
He's only he's like 4 hours up the road, I think, Las Vegas from Phoenix. I'm gonna have to go
definitely hit up the Kaya Shacks and try some of our in-house flowers as well, man.
I will, dude. Definitely. I definitely am going to. It's on the list for my itinerary next time I'm in town.
Yeah, Doghouse has a mean-ass cut of Scooby snacks. It's a little bit different than Pig Farmers and Heroes Cut, but it's super good. Super unique.
Yeah. So you're familiar. Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely,
nice.
Yep.
Cool, man.
Okay.
Cool.
One of the closing questions I got here, Josh, since we have you on the Grasshopper app and not the video chat, we can't accept any calls. So I want to try and wrap up with a couple more questions, and then have you plug your social media. We should have that worked out by the next time you're on.
Yeah, sure. I'll get the video
So
going next time I'm on as well.
yeah, it's all good. I know you're a busy man. We just appreciate you having your voice at least, dude.
Absolutely.
No, it's fine.
The,
Not a
one of my
problem.
last questions was, what sort of ideas or concepts would you like to promote for the future?
Oh, that's a good one. Well, there's a number of things. Right now, I'm actually working with a group that I really kind of inspired me, and I'm inspired by what they do. They're called Minorities for Medical Marijuana. Roz McCarthy, she's the founder of that, and they have an outreach in many states, and I think they have one. Are you in Florida? I think they have. There's a guy named Eric Range in Florida who's a part of this group, and I'm really inspired by them, and they're really kind of trying to create equity and equality within the marijuana industry, and I'm on board, and I've kind of joined up with them as much as I can to give them, my time and my energy. But they've got enough of their own time and energy. They're doing great things. So what they've
Yeah.
inspired me to do within our own company is to kind of create an internship position within our company, which would be rotating, and which would allow people with more challenged barriers to entry into maybe the field, allow them a training period of 3 to 6 months, where they would go through and they would learn everything. And this is more on our production side, but they would also go through the dispensary side. They would learn to
Yep.
grow and learn all the things about production and of cannabis. And in the meantime, or if there was a position that our company needed, they would either rotate into that, or we would help them into the job force, the workforce, with these skills and with some of our contacts. And so, without trying to be too long on that, but so these kind of things, like paying it forward or giving back, is really what I'm personally all about.
That's dope.
So
I dig that, man.
Yeah,
Can I
that's
ask
awesome.
Will, do you have any questions to add before we tune on to the next guest here?
Yeah, I just had one question. It kind of pans back to the ones we asked earlier, but are you
sure.
still do you still have a farm that's producing flower for your 4 shops right now, and how do you sort of disperse what strains and what amounts go to each shop?
Yeah. So what happened was we ended up. And this goes back to the zoning question. When going from medical to recreational, our zoning wasn't appropriate in Portland. So in that we had to kind of look for somewhere else to produce. We found a
Hmm.
property in Lebanon, Oregon, 27-acre property, which ended up in a little bit of a bout with the neighbors. Kind of not they were up at arms at first, not knowing if we were going to be. They thought we were going to bring bikers and all the stereotypes of reefer madness to their neighborhood, and so this was a challenge we had. In the meantime, we purchased a building in Eugene, and we are just now in the process of getting that fired back up. So we kind
Nice.
of we had one run. It's a tier one. It's a small for four dispensaries. We don't have to be super huge, but and we are going to develop that property in Lebanon to be more. But we have a tier one going, which means we have about 5,000 square feet of flowering space. We're ramping that back up because we are doing some air conditioning upgrades. And so we kind of just had our first R&D run through that. What we're doing is kind of, and what you're asking is how we're, utilizing what strains going into the dispensaries. And that's kind of what we're looking at right now, is how we're breaking up our harvests, how we're running what strains at what times to go in, and kind of how we're keeping that rotation on the shelf. So we're kind of in the development of all that, but really what it is we're trying to keep about 30 strains on the shelf at all times, and rotating into that with our production should be fairly easy. It'd take about 8 months to a year to get that many really going, but we'll be there. So that's where
Definitely.
we're at now. We've had a lot of change and a lot of kind of growth in the past year that's kind of led us to now. So we're really happy about where we're at. At the same time,
Awesome.
now's kind of the very early phases of that. So we're figuring all that stuff out, which is fun in itself.
Definitely.
Okay, so Josh, what is your social media and whatever you want to plug as far as an address for your stores or anything? If people can just search you on Leafly, or if you guys have a website, like plug away.
Yeah, man. Well, there's a few. I mean, my own personal social media is on Instagram. I'm Josh Mossberg, JoshMossberg. You can kind of follow me there. LinkedIn, my address, I am Joshua Galbraith on LinkedIn. JoshUaGalbraith. That's my real name. Josh Mossberg is my old grower name from a long time ago on Instagram. And they can, our website though for Kaya, we have KayaHoldings.com, which is more of our, I forgot to mention we are a over-the-counter penny stock publicly traded company. So people can check out our website as well as our security files, SEC filings. And our ticker is KAYS. We're KAYS on the stock market. And our web,
so
we have
publicly traded?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The Kaya Shack is publicly traded.
Super dope.
So we can talk about that more next time, right?
Yeah, dude, that's a total other episode.
Yeah, right. And we're at a point right now where, we're fairly low. We're about 10 cents a share, maybe a little less today, but they move around and you never know what's to come. So we feel like we have a lot of growth and a lot of potential, and KAYS on the stock market, and KayaShack.com, KayaHoldings.com. You can learn a lot about us. Subscribe up for our newsletter, and there we are.
I'm gonna do that. Sign up for the email list, dude. That's where I get the most
information. For sure. You get a lot of you get the CEO and the CFO. They do the little webcast a couple times a year and stuff like that. So kind of
Josh.
Informational. We just released our financials yesterday, or the 19th. So they look a little better, and we're doing pretty good. So, hey, thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we appreciate
you. Of course,
too,
man.
Dude. We'll send you a link when the episode is done recording, so anybody who wasn't able to tune in live can catch your interview on demand.
That'd be great. And I look forward to doing it again, man. Just let me know.
Yeah, man. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks
a
bunch, Josh. Appreciate it, man.
Excellent expertise on the industry, dude. Yeah. Have a good night,
Absolutely, bro. Man. Have a good night.
Cheers.
You guys, talk to you real soon.
Yep. Peace. Later. Okay, Mitchell. It says ICE checking on his end is what McQuinna says. I told him his circle is spinning on our end. Anybody who's tuning in live, we're trying to get the video chat back up with our second guest, Jackson McCormack from Natural Wonders.
And just for me to briefly piggyback on something that Josh said with the minorities in cannabis too, and something I'm pretty passionate about. It's the war on drugs has disproportionately incarcerated people of color. So I feel like those people should be given the first opportunity to when it comes to licensing businesses and all that type of stuff.
I agree. I am one of those persons of color. I got a felony possession of marijuana charge my senior year of college. Had to sit a month in jail after I graduated. Had to stay in Idaho for 2 years on probation before I could escape to Oregon.
Definitely.
And once I got there, it was I had to wait, I think, a year before I could get my medical card. And then it was on from there, man.
No. That's exactly, that's the people that have previously been incarcerated for it are the people that need the first shot at it, because it unfortunately, there's a lot of good people out there, but a lot of it has become, uh, you know, kind of white dominated industry in which people who haven't even been passionate about cannabis for that long are now seeing the financial benefits of it and just throwing money towards it.
Yeah, I agree. On the regulation episode that we're gonna have, I think that's on May 19th. There's a guy named Jason Ortiz. I still have to coordinate with him and book him for the episode, but he's also out there in Washington, D.C., lobbying for the same
Nice.
cause. Um, yeah, equality for people of color in the cannabis industry, too,
Definitely.
is important. So we're just having a little bit of technical difficulties. We had to have our guest leave the call and come back. It looks like he's coming on right now. His light turned green and I can see his logo.
You guys in the corner flashing on.
Okay, I can hear you a little bit, Jackson. Can you keep talking for us?
And find this group thing.
Oh, his circle is spinning. Oh, we can see him now, folks.
Sweet.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is our second guest today on Consumer Podcast. His name is Jackson McCormack. He is the owner of Natural Wonders in Portland, Oregon. I got a lot of love for this dude. He's also a native business owner, person of color in the cannabis industry, so very rare and very talented. So, Jackson, thank you for coming on the show today.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Okay, let me switch to your questions.
Yeah, I caught the beginning before technical circled me out.
Yeah.
Got some nice updates on the mass game from Will, though.
Oh yeah.
Dope.
Unfortunate updates.
I can, like some cookie cutter type questions, I guess, for both of you guys. I wanted you to elaborate on certain parts more than others, just because I know more about your story. Again, can you please state your name, company, city, and state, and medical or recreational as far as your retail operation?
Definitely. So I'm Jackson McCormack, and I own Natural Wonders dispensary in Portland, Oregon. It serves both recreational and medical patients. And yeah, it's been around since 2014.
Awesome. So what inspired you to open a cannabis dispensary?
Well, I started out as a caregiver and a grower in the Oregon Medical Marijuana Program. After that, I became a patient as well. And working directly with patients is really what got me motivated in creating, a good, reliable resource for those patients, to have something consistent, because everything in the past was really direct and that was nice, but you can help people at a different scale when everything gets more established.
Yeah, dude, that's what I always tell folks too, is if you want the cleanest, most organic medicine in the city, you should go to Natural Wonders, because that guy's really stringent on what makes it to his shelf. So my next question, what sort of obstacles have you encountered in getting licensed and opening up your doors as a cannabis retail operation?
Well,
And please start at the beginning, because I want folks to hear the whole story from you on when you first opened your first store and all the things that have happened since then that brought you to where you're at now.
yeah, I think that those, barriers and obstacles have definitely evolved over time. When we were first getting started, we actually got our first opportunity at a uh, original like gray market dispensary space on Northeast Gleason in Portland, where we had been working with that owner directly to connect him with growers and make sure that patients had good access. It was a good, reliable location for us in the city. And because we had that type of vending relationship prior to the dispensary laws passing, when the opportunity came about, there were rules on who could apply for a license and who couldn't. And the original owner there at the collective wouldn't qualify for getting a license in the industry. And so he was looking for someone to kind of continue the work there and do their own thing. And I was first on his list. So we made an attempt there to legalize and applied on the first day that dispensary licenses were available. And this is strictly for medicinal use dispensaries. And there was a waiting period where we didn't really know what happened after that first morning, but it came down to what minutes your application got processed through, because there was a lot of interest at the beginning. And actually 2 dispensaries near us. Originally, we thought there was a particular shop that beat us, but it was actually another shop up the corner that was in before anybody. And they didn't open for about a year and a half, but securing that place in line pretty much eliminated that opportunity for us there on Gleason. And so we had to begin our hunt all over. We ended up finding a really cool location in Southwest Portland, but and we got our provisional license there, and we thought we were about to get rolling. And Southwest is really underserved, so we were pretty excited, but we ended up finding a school location that wasn't listed on the maps that were available for the public. And in Oregon, you have to be at least 1,000 feet away from any compulsory education school, and this school was definitely within about 600 feet. So we gave up that opportunity and continued to hunt until we landed in Southeast Portland. And even that process was really interesting because at that point, there was definitely a lot of buzz even around these medical only dispensaries, and the landlords of the property were open to renting to the industry, but they wanted to make sure they were picking the right people for the space. And so they wanted a business plan and proposal submitted by all of the different applicants so that they could decide who was going to be the best fit for the long term. And so we ended up winning that, basically what felt like a business proposal competition. We ended up winning that selection and securing a lease, but those leases didn't turn out to be as long term as we hoped.
Yeah. So just to nutshell it for everybody, first spot he opened up had to close because someone within 1,000 feet applied first. Second spot got everything lined up, didn't open, found out there was a school within 1,000 feet. So 2 strikes on the third time. All right, we get to open. But what happened after a few years on your lease at the third spot, Jackson?
We started to have all sorts of random disagreements and letters coming from our landlord, who basically wanted to triple up our rent. Our landlords ended up going through a divorce, and we started working with a new partner in the situation, and they did not want to be as accommodating to cannabis, and they wanted a larger share of the pie, uh, as they phrased it. They were the ship. They were our ship guiding us through the rough seas of business ownership, and they felt like they should share in the profits. Interestingly enough,
That's funny.
retail is definitely one of the least profitable areas of the emerging industry, but it's worked out for the better. We've actually secured a space within 1,000 feet of our most recent location, what we call our original location, because it's the only space we got to do real business in for a few years. So yeah, we'll be opening up, and we won't have to suffer the loss of having our original space used for a new up and coming cannabis industry.
That's dope. So the happy ending is he found a new spot and he's gonna open in a month, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So That was a really long answer to an open-ended question, but I'm glad that you were able to tell that story because I'm really
Yeah,
proud of you and your
quite the
persistence.
saga.
Most people would have quit, dude, after the first time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was pretty sad actually. The place that we passed on in Southwest and we informed them that there was a school there, they basically told us, yeah, whenever we would have found out, we would have just shut you down. And so we decided not to open in that space after letting them know the situation. And they ended up licensing another store in that space, one of the older stores in the industry, the Veterans Access Center for Medical Marijuana. And those people operated for a while, and then the OLCC said, hey, there's a school there, or the OHA said, hey, there's a school there, and they promptly shut them down. And that actually ended up being the last iteration of that dispensary group that started out trying to serve veteran patients, and provide
Dang,
them low quality, good access. So
they didn't recover
there
from
was
the mistake.
definitely, yeah, bureaucracy could have uh, taken a little bit, followed a little bit more of their procedures and probably helped a small business survive through a really hard growth stage.
Yeah, dude, that's a bummer. Um, so that brings me to my next question: is what do you feel is the most difficult issue facing retail cannabis businesses today?
I think it definitely depends where you are and where you're approaching the industry from, but I think the common obstacle that we all face is the effective tax rate for dealing with a Schedule One substance, especially being on the retail side. It's basically just considered drug dealing on the federal level, and there's not a lot of write-offs for drug dealing. So I think that a high effective tax rate definitely puts a burden on people, and
Public
I
Law
think
280E, if any folks want to go.
yeah, yeah, and I think when you consider the political conversations that we're having these days about really profitable large businesses not paying any sort of tax on the profits that they're making, and you look into the cannabis industry where you can easily be paying 50 to 70% effective tax rate at the end of the day as a small business. um, I think
Yeah,
it's
dude, that's
important
nothing
to
to work with.
recognize, some of the disadvantages of being a small business and not having a really loud voice at the, policy making level.
Word. Okay, so that's the next cookie cutter question I have is how soon do you think federal legalization is going to happen?
I really wouldn't be surprised if we saw changes during this administration. I think that
Nice.
the
It's a
way
cool
that,
card.
yeah, and I think that the way that it's being phrased, on the right, really has to do with the disagreement between federal and state laws that's becoming more and more common across the country. And I think that having this issue that's really somewhat up in the air, people want some decisions made on how laws are supposed to be applied. And at this point, a majority of places support, cannabis legalization in some form. So I think especially with the big elections rolling up, I think it's really
That's going to be a big issue on everybody's forum, man.
exactly. And a lot of people who have previously been opposed to cannabis have definitely shifted gears to at least be open to the idea.
Yeah, I think in 2017 recreational cannabis made it on the ballot down here in Arizona and it only failed 49 to 51%.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Yeah, even the places where it's failing, it's the margins are narrower and narrower. And it really comes down to access to information for people, because the more people that learn about cannabis, definitely creates more open-mindedness towards its use. Even if people aren't interested in using it themselves, a lot of them aren't opposed to other people trying it out. So
yeah, man. mind your own business type approach. As long as you're not bothering me, I'm not bothered by you. You know.
Yeah.
Um, my next cookie cutter question, I want to let you freestyle at the end for as long as you want to, but I want to get through these just so I can be somewhat journalistic with this podcast. Um, who's been your favorite farm this year in Oregon?
Um,
And then have you sampled the wares anywhere else? I know you travel a lot too.
yeah. I haven't really traveled much this year, but I really like the uh, diversity of the stuff coming out of Deep Creek Gardens lately,
Nice.
especially since they've gotten to showcase some of the breeding work done at Dynasty. I've always been a
Yeah.
really big fan of pineapple fields just as a cultivar, and so I think being able to showcase the breadth of terpene profiles and varieties and really
Agreed.
caring about the plant, I feel like they've been doing a really good job.
Yeah, man. Last time I was in Oregon, I got to try some of that Huckleberry Diesel. I don't think Deep Creek grew it, but
Yeah,
Dynasty
Geek
bred it out of
Farms.
Geek Farms. Yeah, that shit was fire.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
really
it's super
excited
good.
to try some of the upcoming Geek Farms. They brought some of their older varieties back into rotation. Blue Jay is one of my favorites, and that should be coming back around the same time as us.
Right on, dude. I'm hoping I can make a trip up there this summer to go check out the new space. Another cookie cutter question I have is, do you feel like lab testing for cannabis products has become more objective?
I think with anything, with you know, dollars on the table, there's always going to be, some questions of how people are choosing to apply what they're doing. There's, the way that growers and processors prepare their samples to be sent to labs. You know, there's a little bit of variety in the standard operating procedures kind of across the board, but even more than that, even if everybody had really consistent, almost perfect procedures as an industry standard, you're still going to be dealing with some variation. And I think that uh, that's not necessarily understood by consumers.
Yeah, especially if guys are growing from a seed. You know what I
Unless
mean?
we're taking, samples from every part of the canopy of the plant, inside, outside, different selections. You're really, people should give it some sort of a margin for error. I think it's really good as a guide for what sort of ratios you're interested in. And I think it's also really good if you can start to learn terpene profiles that give you the effects that you want. But as far as trying to create a threshold for what sort of numbers you're looking for, I don't think that's necessarily as realistic just because when you look at some of the concentrate and extract numbers, the pieces of the pie um, sometimes end up making more than a whole pie. And that's just in normal standard deviation issues when you're trying to calculate the full constitution of a plant. So I think people get a little bit too obsessed with the specific numbers that they're looking at when really they should be taking the whole picture of what the numbers provide. And definitely testing that looks for more compounds is a lot more beneficial than the more limited tests that are required to be shown on consumer labels.
I agree. So terpene profile is an optional lab test for producers to pay for, correct? It's not required for compliance.
Definitely, yeah,
So,
not required.
so do you think the guys who pay for that extra test and put it on their label definitely sell a little bit better?
I don't know that that's the case. I think consumer education takes a while. And when we're dealing with more experienced medical consumers to a certain degree, and I think that the adult use consumers are starting to get there as well. But there's just a lack of credible voices for a lot of people And so as we start to get more people who are really familiar with pharmacology or even aromatherapy in a professional capacity, and they start to lend their wisdom or their cross applications of knowledge to cannabis, they're going to really open up the door to a lot of people who are just skeptical because they don't know the answers to their questions, and might not even know the question, how to ask the question that they have. So they're really looking for credible information to get their feet wet.
I agree.
Yeah,
That's
I feel like too with that said, people being afraid to ask questions almost is my experience as a bud tender. I mean, a lot of people, always go for what's the highest THC percentage, and even just recently, people I've noticed, people will take a scour at the menu. They won't ask, I'll say if they need any help finding anything. They won't ask about anything, and they'll just I'll notice they always pick whatever's like, if it's a pre-rolled, whatever's highest in THC. Say it's a Rude Boy or something or flower, they always pick the highest THC. And I feel like maybe they've been like shunned from asking the question, of like what actually contributes to potency, because it's not necessarily THC percentage. Some of the more
They'll even abandon their origin, what they might have said in their original mission, about looking for something relaxing or more stimulating in favor of
exactly,
a number that catches their eye.
exactly,
Um, yeah,
and that's
definitely.
that's what I find is just a big thing with consumer education, because Oregon has a great craft beer market and also a great cannabis market, and I feel like people understand craft the craft beer side not more, but like they understand what makes a craft beer craft versus what
like
makes
what's that?
something craft cannabis.
What is that?
And
International bitterness scale or something like that? That's what they always talk
yeah,
about.
and
Yeah.
I just yeah, it's
We need an
trying
international
to
European scale. That's what we need.
yeah, to get people to see that you know, it's more about the care that goes into growing the product, and what's used, what nutrients are used, and you know, that in a sense will always create in my mind just great effects, and cannabis grown to its genetic potential, as they say.
Yes, sir. Okay, so my last cookie cutter question before I just give it up to Jackson to talk about whatever he wishes, and maybe we can add something afterwards, was what sort of ideas or concepts would you like to promote in the future?
I think that there's a lot of counterculture that's associated with cannabis in terms of um, agricultural practices or even like the hippie mindset. And I think that people um, really exploring those different modes and applications of agriculture and looking at ways to apply it in the broader sense. People are really experimenting right now in the cannabis industry. And I think there's a lot to learn from traditional agriculture, but I think definitely trying to identify some of the common issues with monoculture and traditional agriculture and how we can solve those in cannabis can really lend a benefit to the bigger picture. I guess I think that people should be looking at ways that cannabis can be integrated into everything else that we're doing, and not really look at it in this isolated fashion.
Word, word. Okay, bro. So, we're gonna open it up to questions after you want to plug any social media or tell anybody about what you've been working on, when you're gonna open up again. Anything you want to
Yeah.
plug on your end, bro, have a way.
Yeah. Social media is always just uh, a storm because even as we close this most recent shop, a lot of our staff, including my personal account and some of our managers, lost their Instagram presence, which is constant issue in the cannabis space. We've gone through at least 3 or 4 different handles sometimes successfully recovering them, but never for the long term. So our most recent Instagram handle is PDX Wonders. As far as I know, it is still active and exists as of today.
All right.
How long that will be there, we really don't know, but I'm really hoping for some shifts on that front. It's actually just gotten worse as Facebook's integrated tighter with Instagram. I can't even create new accounts on my phone, so might be getting a new one of those here soon just to get back to the social media action. You can also find us on Facebook, Natural Wonders Oregon. We're definitely at least on our second iteration there. But we will be posting updates to those spaces. Naturalwonderspdx.com is our website. Our new address is 3831 Southeast Main Street in Portland, Oregon, and that space is under development. We should be open here within the next 30 days. So we are staying busy on trying to make it happen, but we are converting an old 1890s home into a retail space. So there are some planned updates and there's some surprise updates as you peel down those ancient walls. There's some secret surprises. So yeah, we're excited to get back to what we do. We definitely miss all of the vendors that we've been working with essentially since it was medical only. That's definitely something that's really important to us, is showcasing a lot of the people who started out serving patients directly, which is where a lot of us got our first experiences with the medical cannabis industry here in Oregon, is trying to figure out ways to help patients deal with their qualifying conditions and really trying to promote more of a socialized medicine aspect. It's really sad what's happened to the medical program here in Oregon, because originally the ideal situation and the really what was supposed to be the standard situation for patients and growers who were able to create long-standing relationships with it was a pound and a half, 24 ounces a year, or 2 ounces a month, depending on if they did single crop harvests or more of a perpetual consistent cropping. And the growers would take their excess out and find patients to reimburse them for the cost of their work. And it created the foundation for the industry that we have today. And it did a lot better job of taking care of patient needs than any version of that we have going on now. The patients have definitely been sacrificed for a lot of the progress that we've made in terms of being an industry.
Okay, so not to just cut you off, we want to open it up to callers right now. It says we have a few people tuning in live. So if anybody listening live right now wishes to call in and ask questions of Jackson from Natural Wonders, the phone number is 833-777-3227. That's 833-777-3227. We're gonna see if anybody calls in and wants to ask any questions. I guess you could ask me and Will a question too. To paraphrase the number again, it's 833-777-DABS, because we're on the Concerned Dabs podcast right now. So how's it looking over there on your end, Mitchell? Is anybody calling in? Somebody is? Nobody is calling in. Okay. Says it looks good at least.
Oh, wait,
Yeah.
it's our first episode.
Okay, so what else do you want to talk about, Mitchell? Or I mean Jackson?
Well, I think that it's really exciting that banking access is getting a lot of noise right now. At the federal level, they're constantly talking about these duffel bags full of cash that we're just overwhelmed with. I don't necessarily find that to be my experience. I think it's an important conversation, but I think if we look at the root of this issue, it's that we are considered drug traffickers of a Schedule 1 substance. And so descheduling cannabis is really one of the only actual solutions to what we're dealing with. Banking access doesn't change the fact that the federal government considers us drug traffickers and subjects us to really different and really strict IRS tax code, which is an overwhelming burden for people who are at a small business level trying to compete. We see really big, now billion-dollar acquisitions going on between, on the corporate side of cannabis, even multinational deals being struck. And I'm sure that bleeding money is all fine and dandy for a few folks who see the long game and are on a much larger scale, but it's definitely detrimental to creating and sustaining local cannabis economies. So descheduling cannabis, not rescheduling, descheduling cannabis and taking it off the Controlled Substances Act
All right.
is definitely the next step in legitimizing the industry and making sure that people have a viable path forward.
Dope. Okay, so I'm gonna plug the phone number 2 more times, and then I'm gonna let you continue on. Anybody listening right now live who wants to call in, the phone number is 833-777-3227. You can call in and ask Jackson, Will, or Katie Kane any questions you want pertaining to the cannabis industry. Again, the phone number is 833-777-3227. That's 833-777-DABS. Okay.
Need like a little soapbox emoji for myself here. And that's actually, some of the criteria that in the most general sense that we end up applying to the vendors and the people that we work with. The quality and care and the sustainability practices of the vendors are really what helps set our shop apart. That, and along with the employee education and the customer service that we're able to provide. But yeah, I mean, having vendors that we get to work with where I don't have to find my tiny soapbox, that's really a deciding factor, because we're not here to force everybody to comply with, our vision of cannabis sustainability and a better future. We're really looking for people who share the same type of vision as us and want to promote that collaboratively through supporting each other's businesses.
No doubt, man. That's I dig that too. Most everybody who's on the shelf brands themselves as either organic or no-till or super clean practices. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
And I remember I heard you guys earlier talking about some of the changes that are going on with USDA organic. And I think that that's just another example of the large scale lobby and the powerful efforts that agricultural companies have over our regulatory systems. We should definitely have activists and advocates in the positions that determine, what does organic mean, if it's something that we want to be able to have faith in when we see it on a store shelf. I don't think that, bending so that way more people can participate in the organic label is necessarily beneficial. And I think that transparency is really the most important part. So if we're going to start making concessions, we should really be creating levels of organic, I guess, because I think that people should be able to understand what sort of practices they're supporting when they pick up a product in the store. And organic isn't something that cannabis growers can use at this time, but screening for those sustainable practices is something that's important to us. And somebody being able to create a real focused, transparent, and scientifically backed option for how to label those products is definitely something that has been attempted to be filled in the industry, but really hasn't been developed in the scale that we need. And I think a lot of that comes down to whoever's going to pay for it. They want they want it to fit exactly with what they're already doing rather than making things better.
To change what they're already doing. Because when I read that article about the herbicides being allowed for USDA organic, I was just like, Jesus Christ, man.
Yeah.
That's still a poison that you're gonna be able to ingest, even if it's labeled as organic. Like,
Yeah. And I do get a little caught up with the issue that, cannabis is taxed pretty heavily across the board. Generally gets in the category of having a sin tax. So it's getting taxed because it's not good for you, like cigarettes or alcohol, etc. But those other types of products that face those types of sin taxes don't have to meet the standards that we do for cannabis. And while I think that all cannabis should be grown, pesticide and herbicide free, and people should be looking at different ways to prevent pests and diseases as they practice their agricultural practices. I don't think it really makes sense to be applying a sin tax and strict standards in terms of what can be used for agriculture. Either they need to accept the fact that cannabis has a lot of benefits and shouldn't be subjected to really high taxes when it's actually benefiting society as we make it more available and standardized, or we should allow those taxes to stand and I don't know, pull
yeah,
back on the regulation.
yeah, dude. I hope that you're available during the recreational episode to call in and ask questions of the people who are on there, because um, the knowledge runs deep, friend, and I feel like you could really ask some cool questions of those folks when they appear. I think that one's
Yeah.
May 19th, I think, is when that one is on. So
Oh, nice.
if you can
Yeah.
put that on your schedule, that would be dope.
Yeah.
Because for real, we wanted to dedicate a whole episode towards regulation of the cannabis industry, but difficult to try and book guests. So we have lobbyists from the East Coast who we're trying to get. We also have a girl who is writing her, was it a doctorate paper dissertation or something like that, on the environmental impacts of cannabis in California. I think she's Hoopa Indian.
Yeah, they're terrible with pesticides down there.
Yeah, dude. And then just she's writing about the environmental factors on, streams and habitat and stuff like that. So hopefully she can have some cool regulation stuff to add, like, because most of that stuff is probably allowed according to their laws. So making laws against it and then making people compliant with those laws is another story. But I want people to hear about it so they can talk about it, because there's not a lot of insight to the industry. The news doesn't cover it as much, so we're trying to have people on the show who can talk about it from experience.
Legit.
Yep. Is there anything you would like to add or ask Jackson, Will? We're going to probably tune off here in the next 6 minutes. We didn't get to go the full 2 hours or have our music portion yet because we have a mechanical license to figure out for broadcasting music live.
Totally. I think you covered most of it. I'll try and if I think of something, I'll spot it off here in a.
Okay, so in the future, if anybody's listening, if we can't get the mechanical license and you know somebody who produces their own music and hasn't necessarily published it through ASCAP or BMI, maybe they're just a SoundCloud artist and they're super hot. If they create their own beats and it's not copywritten and they're cool with us broadcasting it, we're trying to have some sort of 15-minute musical portion on the show at the end. Um, but we're working on that. We're a work in progress here at Concerned Dabs Podcast. We appreciate everybody for tuning in. I hope everybody can tell their friends that it was awesome. And then it'll still be available for download or listening on demand at www.concerneddabspodcast.com. Anything else, Will?
No, thanks for tuning in, y'all, and we'll
Anything
see you
else,
next
Jackson?
week.
Well, thanks for having me on the show, guys.
Dude, we really appreciate you.
Absolutely.
the knowledge does run deep, man, and I appreciate your expertise. You're able to articulate it really well, especially for the folks who might not be cannabis people. I think that you're communicating effectively with them, and that's awesome, dude.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do we got next week, Kane? What's our
Okay, so
episode?
next week is the cultivation episode. Believe we have Joshua Steensland from Freshwater Farms. Super dope. Indoor no-till, man. Not a lot of guys doing that. He's also doing it with LED, so I'm excited to ask him questions about
Nice.
his process. We're looking to try and get someone from 10-4. If you can still hook that up, Will.
I just
If
saw
not,
Steve-O yesterday.
dude, if you can send him a text and tell him what's up, that would be awesome.
Yeah, it's Steve up.
It's next Sunday from 8 to 10 p.m. We can put him at 8:15, 8:45, or 9:15, I believe. So
What are you dabbing, Terps?
I'm not dabbing it right now. Actually, I'm just smoking flower. But both my parents are patients, so
I bought some 10-4 flour yesterday at a local dispensary.
nice. It's nothing like Oregon flower. It's not bad. Right now, I'm smoking on some triple OG. Let's see if I can get it out.
And then the third guest I was trying to book is Noah.
Yep.
He's a medical grower, and he also has more than 2 cards. So he downloaded that metric license.
Yep.
And he's about that life. I'm like, dude, you got balls, bro.
Seed to sale.
Dude, I really look up to him because
seed to sale medical.
Most medical growers gave up once that was a requirement. It's like, what? I gotta use the computer and track everything, and he's about it. He's still compliant. I believe he had a inspection sometime this year, so I'm excited to ask him questions about how it's going and what his plans are for the future.
Absolutely.
All right, so I think that's about it. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. We'll share the link on our social media if you want to tune in to us. It's at Concerned Dabs Podcast on Instagram. You can search Concerned Dabs Podcast on Facebook. And I think it's just at Concerned Dabs on Snapchat. They want to shorten your name up on there. So please check us out. We'll be back next week with the cultivation episode. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, tune in next week, y'all. Thanks for tuning in.
Later.